So after 130 hours plus of gameplay between this beta, last beta, end game beta, I finally maxed out all classes in all the different betas and have gotten a pretty good idea on what to expect when Diablo 4 launches. Now, if you're watching this video live, it is Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day for those mothers out there. I myself am going to be spending the day with my wife and child, so I am done with Diablo for today. And it is a good thing because I am getting teased. I absolutely love the game and I want to play more, but I've spent 100 hours, 120 hours in the first zone and I want to play more. It is torturous, honestly. Now, I'm going to give you my full thoughts on the game, how I felt about some of the changes, as well as anything that I might find good about the game, some critiques, etc. I'm not going to do any editing or anything. I'm just going to give you guys the raw take. I am tired in terms of how much I've actually played this game. It is currently 4 a.m. I'm recording this because I've just been playing the game a ton. And to give you guys a TLDR here at the beginning, it is an 8.5 out of 10. It's gone up, in my opinion, for my personal enjoyment, and I'll go over some of the reasons why. I know some people disagree with that, but in general, this game is going to be probably the best ARPG released ever. Not because it's better than every other ARPG, which I personally think, but because of how willing the developers are to take this game in a positive direction, and the fact that we haven't really gotten an amazing ARPG with top tier graphics, top tier quality that plans on being a mainstay seasonal game in quite some time. Now, Last Epoch came out. There's a couple other RPGs that came out, and those are all great, but I feel like Diablo 4 is a cut above any of them others. So that's what we got going for us. But what did I enjoy? What changes did they make in this beta? The first thing that they did was do a lot of class balancing. And what it ended up doing was make the game harder. They nerfed a lot of things, and they also changed a lot of skills. And in combination with the reduction in legendary drops from the previous beta, now this, people like to say that it was increased in the previous betas and now this is normal. To me, that was normal and this is reduced because that's what I played and that's how many hours I've had. So this is a change, not the normal. Whatever you want to define it, one thing's for certain, I personally really enjoy that aspect. Now, I mention this because in combination with the class changes, no legendary items for the early majority part of the game. In fact, on my rogue here, I have 5 legendary items with like 13 or 14 hours of gameplay into the rogue, which is really crazy considering 4 of those came from Ashava. So I didn't do any legendary farming or anything like that in the beta because I just wanted to try and see what it was like or going to be like for the live game. And I think that the live game is at a very good spot in terms of difficulty because I think the game was way too easy before. And with the reduction of legendary drops, as well as the class balancing, I think the game's in a much better state at this point. I think people overreact a lot when they consider class balancing for the early game. I also don't think that we have a pretty poor idea on what class balancing will look like in the end game. This could be totally different. But in terms of the actual process, most of the classes feel pretty good still. Specifically, the Druid still feels a little bit weaker, and so does the Barbarian, but that's because the melee classes have an innate rough time against boss fights, which we'll go over later on. And I felt that pretty brutally when playing both those classes. So that is something to consider. But things like Necromancer, things like Sorcerer were so overtuned that they made the game trivial. Like I could walk into level 25 zone at level 5 and kill them with my summons last beta. That's probably not something that's able to be or should be able to be done. That's all I'll say about that. Now, as I mentioned, the class balancing stuff has been pretty good. And I think that all the classes have their really unique kind of ideas and builds and all that type of stuff. Every class that I've played has its different identity, which is really, really important to note. And I've really, really enjoyed that about this game. Now, a few things about the content in the game. We have a few things that we are able to experience in both the betas, or at least all three of the betas at this point. One thing we haven't really experienced in the game is endgame, unless you've played the endgame beta, but even then you didn't really get too much information about it. The endgame is still up in the air, and we can't really talk or give an opinion on that in terms of us actually experiencing it. All we could say is whether or not we potentially like the systems upcoming, and I think they're going to be pretty good. But in terms of actual content in the game right now, we have things like open world events, open world, dungeons, things like that. The open world specifically has been my favorite part about the game. And that's because I'm an MMO enjoyer. I can't help it, guys. I play Guild Wars 2. I play World of Warcraft. I play old school RuneScape. I like seeing other players around the game and making it feel like the world is alive. That's what I like. And that's exactly what Diablo 4 does, which is something that I don't get from any other ARPG ever. That's I guess, a polarizing opinion. Some people hate it. Some people love it. A lot of people don't have a middling opinion. Not that you can't really say that it doesn't do anything negative, because I totally understand the criticism that you have to interact with players and they can actually ruin your events. For example, the world boss, we lost twice out of the many times that I did it just by me joining some random group, and I was basically trying to carry the whole thing, and because I didn't farm for legendary items, I did not have a build optimized to be able to do that. So it can be pretty rough sometimes. And if you're a solo player, that would have had no problem, because it'd be tuned for solo players and you can just beat it if you're skilled enough. So that is a pretty big criticism, and it's something that's kind of the nature of open world in general. There are always going to be players that are better, always going to be players that are worse, but in ARPGs specifically, a lot of the focus is on character progression, and I do think that it's a pretty big negative for a lot of people. But me personally, I really enjoyed it. We also have things like dungeons, that's going to be a mainstay content, and the renown system. I really enjoy going through and picking up the renown system the first time, specifically the altars. I don't necessarily enjoy it the latter times. For like this time around, I didn't really care to go and actually max out the renown system in terms of like go and finish the map, whereas I did in the previous beta. That might change when we get the live game, when we get the seasons, and there's worthwhile reasons to go do that, besides getting the 2 skill points, which I did do in this beta. But I do think that the renown system is going to be a fun one-time thing, and then we might get sick of it very quickly. It's one of the bigger criticisms I have of this game. I could see this being an MMO system. I know that I personally, when I play an MMO, I don't want to repeat the systems that I've already beaten unless it's like a dungeon. And so if I'm doing like a collection or a puzzle or something and I get reset, I'm going to be a little irritated. And I see that from a lot of other people out there. So I hope that it ends up being a lot more engaging, and there's going to be some fun things to do with how they're focusing in on dungeons and such. Like, let's say they put aspects in certain dungeons, so now you go around the map doing renown progression, but also getting your aspects for certain builds. That could be also very, very fun. There's a lot of ways they can make it even better, but I will say that the renown system can potentially be something that can be a little irritating. The dungeons themselves, they've actually had a lot of improvements from the beta, or previous beta. And that is that there's a lot less backtracking. There's a lot less annoying parts where you're not killing monsters in dungeons. There's also still a lot of backtracking and a lot of points where you're not killing monsters in dungeons. They made it better, but not to what people want at the end of the day. Me personally, I felt like dungeons are always going to be repetitive. They're always going to have some sort of like, oh, you got to kill a certain amount of monsters or whatever. So it doesn't bother me that much. But I do think that if I'm going to give a fair review here, having the dungeons be somewhat repetitive can get a little boring, especially in the early game. We'll see when we start getting access to additional maps. Because as I mentioned, we've had this map for so long. I am getting so teased that I want more Diablo. And I'm not getting it. So, yeah. In terms of builds and skill tree, I personally find it intriguing that you have sort of a set path in Diablo 4 where you have like thematic skills and you kind of pair those thematic skills together. Every single class has this kind of theme aspect to it, and I really, really enjoy that, especially as someone who doesn't want to sit there and kind of look through the entire skill tree. I am someone who enjoys min-maxing in the end game, but going through the leveling process, I want to enjoy my progression of the character, get my legendaries, etc., and feel good about that. And this game does absolutely allow you to do that, especially with the respec cost or respec instantly whenever you want. It's pretty crazy, although it does cost a little bit of gold. Now, in terms of anything else that is worth reviewing on the game, the graphics feel great, the combat is smooth, the storyline seems good. These are all things that are a little bit more subjective, but in my opinion, all these things are top notch. There was very, very little, I guess you say, low responsibilities. Like when I'm casting an ability, I didn't feel like I was doing nothing. So that was a really good feeling. And then on top of that, as I mentioned, the graphical quality of this game is absolutely amazing, as you can see just looking at some of these portraits back here. Overall, guys, I'm going to have to give Diablo an 8 out of 10. 8.5 out of 10, what I meant to say. That bumps up by 0.5 from previous iterations. I think that everyone should give it a shot if you can. At least go ahead and potentially, if there was some sort of future free trial, try it then. But if you don't have the money, then don't buy it if you don't like ARPGs, because it is an ARPG at the end of the day. But if you are an ARPG enjoyer, this game is going to be a very, very big game, and something that a lot of us enjoy just for simply experiencing a lot of the ARPG mechanics. Like the progression feels nice and feels difficult, and the progression also, or the actual combat feels good, the killing of the monsters feels good, and that's basically what ARPGs are, right? So let me know what you think in the comment section down below of the beta. What you think about the game, whether or not you should buy it. Did I miss anything that you felt was super, super important to talk about? Again, there's so many different nuanced systems and all this type of stuff, but at the end of the day, I only wanted to talk about the experience for the beta, and to be fair, it was a very, very small experience overall. In the grand scheme of the game, maybe 5 to 10% of the total game. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you off the next one.